Hello everyone, welcome back for the last installment of my interview with Jeff Galewood of JMG Reptile. I'm Trey, Palmetto State Geckos. It's been a long haul, but here's the last one. It's going to be about an hour and 20 minutes. Sit down, spend some time, listen to what we're saying, come back, finish it if you have to. You're really going to enjoy it. Do me a favor, subscribe, get some notifications. We're going to have a lot of really good content coming. I'm about to do a recording tomorrow about Black Knights, and not the same old story, just my Black Knights and how I feel about them, and we'll go from there. So if you want more content, let me know. Post down in the comments. If you have a criticism, you got something you want to say, hey, message me, let me know. I'm doing all this for everybody. So plus I'm enjoying the hell out of it. So hope you like this, and I appreciate it.
And that's actually, it goes back to one of the original questions you asked me about struggles starting out versus things now. There was a lot more disease in a lot of reptile species back then, especially with leopard geckos. The big main concern one is cryptosporidium. Cryptosporidium was extremely prevalent back then. It's a lot less prevalent now. Back then, if you were buying leopard geckos late 90s, early 2000s, I'd say you have about a 50% chance if you're just buying from somebody to have cryptosis, maybe 40%. It's close, though. It's a very large ratio.
Yeah, I was listening to a podcast. I don't remember which one, but John Scarborough was on there, and that's Gecko Boa. And he was talking about the amount of money he spends on testing for that. And it's like, geez, like he takes, when it comes to like, he takes it serious. It's like, I can't remember, there's like a ridiculous amount of money.
He tests like once a year. I don't test, but I don't have like basically, because there's like leopard geckos I see people that they have, and I'm about certain they don't have cryptosis, but I don't want to do. Because people are like, what's the proper way to quarantine a leopard gecko? My process is, I know a few other people do similar ones. It's like, say if I was to get leopard geckos and the new project, I'd put them in a completely different room, preferably a completely different establishment, a completely different building. I'd breed them there, take the eggs, hatch them and put them in my clean facility. And those other leopard geckos, even if they tested negative 2 or 3, 4 times, they would never make it into my actual collection. They stay in that complete separate collection forever. But I have a pretty large collection, so I don't take any risks. Once everything over here is clean, there's really no way for cryptosis to get in unless somebody purposely sends it to me or rubs my feeders in it. So that would be it.
How many geckos do you have
right now? Well, I'm hatching babies, so I got a lot of babies hatching. There's probably about 600.
Oh. Wow, that's a lot. That's a good amount.
It's quite a bit. I have some orders going out already. The one person's a specialty reptile shop in Japan, and they sell high-end geckos, especially lineages. And so we agree on a price, and I list all the morphs accordingly, and I get pretty good amount for wholesale. But then they are buying a lot of geckos. I don't have to list them and stuff, and then they're selling them for a lot of them are $200 to $300, $400 geckos.
You bastard! That's why I never get to see anything.
Well, I
spend money, right?
I mean, leopard geckos are a little tough because I'll list the genetics and I'll be like, well, here's a cool leopard gecko for $250, and I'll get like a bunch of questions and stuff, and I'm like, well, the problem is I only have so much time, and I'm like, well, I gotta my hog knows just the whole thing and everything, and because I have a building here, and it's crazy because you'll get these people that I still consider myself a small breeder because I'm hands-on. And I know people that are they're considered like medium or kind of smaller breeders, and they're not very hands-on because they'll say, hey, I produced this, you know what this is? Or, hey, do you have an idea? Can you help me identify these? And I'm like, what did you breed to it? They're like, well, this was a fire. Like, what does the mom look like? They're like, well, I don't know. My guys bred it. I'm like, you're not doing your own pairings? I'm like, what is the point of it doing it at that point? Like, I'm pretty hands-on, even with watering and feeding. There are like when I was real sick, there was a downturn where I wasn't able to do that as much, but I'd still be around. And usually when I have people take care of my stuff, it's like people I know very well, and then I also go in there and check. And generally everything, even sections that I don't take care of, I'm taking care of them at certain points. I'm in there in 2 weeks. I'm like, I'm going to do a full clean out, and I'm going to look at everything. I want to look at everything and enjoy the animals and see where everything's at. I want to, feed the stuff and everything. So, you know, what was the original question? Because I told you that was going to be an issue with me. I'm going to go from one topic and then go into another one.
No, you're good. We were talking about the positive and negatives, and then
this is okay. We're still actually kind of in that realm. I like that. It's a very generalized question, so pretty much anything I can say can actually be interpreted as that in some form.
And I get you to ramble. That's all I cared about.
Okay.
No, it's and I haven't had to worry about I'll take that back. I do worry about disease, but that's why I made sure that when I bought everything that I was buying, I went to the very best. I looked at the very best, and I researched and I looked because I wanted to start on a level plane to where I don't have to play catch up and I've said this before. It's like, I want to be an artist. Well, I want to paint with the best paintbrush and the best canvas possible so that I could do it. So that's what I kind of try to tell people that are new. Hey, yes, it's not going to be cheap and it's going to be hard work, but elevate to a level. That way you're on a better playing field than if I got this one from a guy who thinks he knows half of this, and now I have to test breed. Well, I don't have to test breed because I paid a little bit more money, and the guys, and I know for a fact, like I've gone to people like Darren at Calico Gecko where I get a lot of the super giants, and I've seen what he does, and I know he's done his due diligence. So now I can focus on making what I love and already like, and then change it a little bit to what I'm going to. So, a negative I see in this is a lot of people just half-assing into it, and I know it irritates the hell out of people that have been here doing it for a long time. And I try to tell people, don't stand on the backs of those people that have done it and just half-ass it, pay attention and learn and do it the right way. And that's what I try to tell people. And it's hard nowadays because a lot of people, they just want the easy way out.
Right. Yeah. A lot of people are looking for easy. And you're right about the one of the half-ass. This happened a lot. There's one guy in particular that was doing it a lot, and it was driving me nuts. And it's just one of those things I was just like, you know what, it'll eventually go away. And it did. But there was a guy that was getting leopard geckos wholesale, and basically if it looked like a morph, he would list it as that. And he had these ones, and he was listing them as these types of bloods, basically like, he's referring to them as pure line bloods and some of them as black bloods. And I know for 100%, 110% beyond, they were not. And he was doing that so he could get the price for them. And it's a couple people called him out on it. And he goes, well, that's what all these breeders do anyway. He goes, they just look for things that look a particular way, and they just put labels on whatever it looks like. It's like, that's not what everybody's doing. That's what you're doing. Yeah. And but he was mostly a buyer reseller in Miami.
Yeah. It's and that's I had a terrible, it's what hurts this is you have breeders that try to act like they are it. And I went to that first Repticon, and I'd done what I thought was most of the research, and I paid the extra money to be there early. It was very cold. It was January, and I had my daughter with me, and we're sitting in line, and we're first in line, and you go in, and the first big table with leopard geckos, and I wanted to get a really good female to start doing this. We already had a couple geckos. They were my kids. One of them was named Michael Scott, and we're looking, and you got people nudging you. You're all over the place, and you're trying to ask questions, and you're looking, and you're trying to see the best, but they're in a tub, and they've got stuff written all over it. And I love snows, and it's like lavender snow breeder, $200. And I'm like, and I'm trying to ask questions. They're like, oh yeah, she's great. Oh yeah, she's great. She's just got a little bit of shed on her. Well, I and it's part of my ignorance. I bought it, gave her $200. We walk away, and I start looking, and I actually, get to looking, and she's grossly overweight. She's been she has no toe tips whatsoever. And I didn't know enough to look for that kind of thing. And when I tried talking to the breeder about it, they just, oh, well, you get what you paid for. Don't, and she never ovulated. I nursed her back to health. It was a hard 3 months. She wouldn't eat. She wouldn't do anything right. But it was a hard lesson I learned. But there's a lot of them out there that try to portray themselves as really big but they don't care. They don't put the right effort into it. So.
Yeah, right. That's the thing too. That's the thing too. It's what kind of good things to keep some projects at least somewhat compact. Like, and that's the thing with me too. It's like that's why I have quite a few leopard geckos, and I want to as these projects get a little stronger, the ones that I'm selecting, I'm going to reduce and kind of like focus on those. Because it's like, I love being hands-on with all this stuff, and I am with the leopard geckos, but, pretty much all over here at my old place where I'm still transitioning everything with my older leopard geckos, especially with me not being like, I've been kind of up and down. I haven't been able to be over there as much. And so then I just have people taking care of this stuff, like my family members and everything. And, I know they're all doing good and everything, but, I'm not over there a whole lot. Like I check in there every couple weeks, or sometimes like when I was real sick, I was only over there once a month to make sure everything was going smoothly. But everything was, so it wasn't really anything I had been too worried about.
Yeah, it's good you got that kind of support. Your dad, is he still?
Well, he actually he helped big time with the place I'm at now, acting as general contractor. Yeah, because I needed a general contractor, and he's very good at building things. He's he was a drywall finisher. He's pretty good. If I have any electrical questions, I ask him. Oh, yeah. So he helped with that a lot, but he's actually had some health issues of his own, and he actually broke his femur bone. So he's up and doing stuff, but he does a lot of his artwork. He's generally pretty busy, but recently, since I've been struggling, he's actually come over about every other day for about 1 hour and helps me with whatever I'm working on. So that's really cool. And I get to talk to him and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he pretty much harasses me and tells me I should be doing things better, which is good because then it's more encouragement to strive to be better.
Yeah, I'm going through the same thing. I'm from Virginia originally, and I went out to Utah for a good job, and then I found a better one here in South Carolina, so I moved again, and my father moved down to be closer, and we hadn't been close for a couple of years, and I've got him constantly, and he's excited about what I'm doing with the geckos. He's not a reptile person, but he'll ask me questions and want to see the new babies, but it's hey, you should be doing that, Dad. You of all people have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. So it's cool that he's at least he's somebody you can lean to. I hope he gets better. That sucks. He broke his femur, but
yeah. Well, he still gets around and stuff. It's just been kind of like just kind of just something he has to kind of live with now at this point. But he's pretty much he's healed from it. But it's just he's not going to be running now anymore afterwards.
Yeah, of course.
But yeah, he lives about.
He's not going to clean poop for 3 hours.
No, he's not doing that. Plus, he hates that anyway. That's his least favorite stuff. He'll all be when he stops by. Like today, he was actually here, and we were feeding hognose snakes. And then he went out for a cigarette break, and then I came out later. And he's like, "Well, let's feed off the rest." I go, "Oh, I just finished the last." He's like, "Yeah, the rest of that stuff fed off." I'm like, "Yeah," and so but we talk and stuff, and he only lives about 5 minutes away, and but I showed him actually a lot of the leopard gecko stuff I was working on earlier this year. He came by one time, and I showed him everything that I was like, hey, this is kind of a new project. This is basically the project we were doing, but I'm spinning it off to this because that's what we were always doing. I was like, I'm still continuing it, showing him this, and there's a few that I actually thought were pretty cool, which is fun to talk about with him. So he's very hard to impress with leopard geckos. Very hard.
But it's so awesome that you have that, because anybody that I can trick to come into my gecko room for 2 minutes is going to get stuck there listening to me pull tubs and go, hey, look at this, I'm working that. And usually it's my wife or it's a buddy, but they don't care. I wish I had somebody that I could at least try to impress. That's awesome that you have him to come in and you're going over, and I guarantee you he's not so much as art, but he's got to be proud of the work you keep doing and how he's seen you do this since you were small, and it's that's awesome you have that.
Yeah, oh yeah, that's cool. And then I also have my friend Andrew from SG Reptiles. He only lives about 15 minutes from me, and we'll talk about projects together and stuff. And so I would look at what he's doing. So yeah, I guess you'll eventually meet those kind of people, but it's tough because sometimes people are doing their own thing. But yeah, luckily my dad and I, we had the same type of passions and interests and everything. So
that's awesome. All right, well, let me move to the next one because this one's a big one. This is a big one. So, and of course, this spurs because of the idiot that lives a little north of me who released a zebra cobra into the neighborhood, and there's huge press all over the place. And so, do you feel there will be a point at some time? And when you say this, if you'd have said this maybe 10 years ago, you'd go, no, hell no. But do you think that at some point there will come a time where it will be illegal for people like us to own and breed any exotic animal? Because the legislation that they're trying to push of this, it's very broad when it says exotic animal. Like, it doesn't say exotic harmful animal. It doesn't say, here in South Carolina, they just outlawed black and white tegus. It's getting a little bit crazy, and it's because of people like this. So do you think there's going to come a time where they're going to say, well, if it doesn't live there naturally, you can't have it?
I would hate to see anything like that happen, but yeah, but here's the thing. This legislation is always pushed by people that don't have a strong understanding of these species and don't have a professional background or at least a lot of experience with the animals that fall into these groups. And yeah, then they have these exotic, and then the term exotic is just super generalized.
Yeah, you have exotic dogs.
Exactly. What I think would happen is, like, if they even pass a law, then they find out that, hey, there's so many species that people keep that fall under this category, they're going to have to come back and revise it. Unless they want to, like, completely kill off an entire industry that allows people to keep pets, and then people that sell pet products, and then supplies and all the other things that go into it. I mean, it's a easily multi-billion-dollar business.
As long as Amazon still makes money from it, they won't do away with it. So and that's my feeling. Like, as long as the big box stores are still going to make money on it, then I don't think it'll be but so much of an issue.
Yeah, the problem is there's no regulation. The problem is irresponsible people and then mistakes. Mm-hmm. With anything, there's always going to be irresponsible people and mistakes. There's PETA, they're kind of, in my opinion, they're a bit nihilistic and extremist. They're actually not wrong with a lot of their ideologies and stuff. I mean, that would work if you wanted to end, like, say, animal abuse. Let's just say, talk about, like, people keeping dogs. Some dogs, like, end up getting abused, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. And neglected. How do you bet? Well, if nobody's allowed to keep them, they can't. Well, you can say anything about anything. How do we end child abuse? Well, if nobody's allowed to have children, there isn't going to be any child abuse. And it's a nihilistic outcome because it's like, well, the only way to stop it is to completely just shut everything off. And that's just.
But they've done that. There's places like in Petersburg, which is a city in Virginia, it's against the law to own a pit bull, and that's because there were so many. It's not the best of neighborhoods. There were so many backyard breeders breeding pit bulls, and they were getting loose, and they were killing animals, hurting people. It's against the law in the city limits to own a pit bull. And
yeah, I mean, there's city limits like that. I think actually in Cleveland we have that by me. I'm not sure. I might be wrong, but I do know it's in a few areas. The thing is, though, this is a problem because it reflects negatively on the rest of the hobby, even though hot keepers are pretty separate from, say, leopard and hognose and ball python and boa breeders, but it brings attention to it. And luckily we have U.S. ARC, and so it's always good to be a U.S. ARC member, especially if you believe in keeping, animals, or people's rights to have pets, exotic pets, whether it be a leopard gecko or a sulcata tortoise. Now, the thing is, you don't want over-regulation, but that's where everything keeps going because everybody ends up like there always ends up a mistake with everything, and they're like, well, we need more regulation then. It's like, well, you get to a point where there's always going to be certain mistakes that happen. This guy was supposed to actually, from what I heard, he had a lot of the proper stuff, or made it look like that. They had like a lot of locks on his stuff, and most of the stuff was locked up. I don't know what happened there. They originally, I think they said something like it got loose around November. I mean, if I had a zebra spitting cobra loose in my house, I'd be pretty concerned. So why wasn't he that concerned? Did he know it got outside? And then at that point, was he hoping, well, if it did get outside, it probably died due to the cold?
No, this was recently. I believe this one was only like last month in North Carolina.
Yeah, but no, it was loose from his possession since November.
Oh, God, I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, it was loose from his possession in November, yeah. But it was that he never reported it. And, yeah, it got outside at some point. But who knows when it got outside? Maybe it lived in his house up until January, February, then got out. Because I don't think a zebra spitter could – but I don't know where zebra spitters are from. It's also a very common name, just zebra spitter. It's like, I don't know.
I guess in India.
Right, but if it's from a more arid savanna region in northern India, they actually might get cold nights. So there might be an area where they get down to the 40s and 50s. So this snake might have the ability to, find burrows and, temporarily brumate. I don't know. But then I seen a picture of it on that guy's porch. I don't know if anybody else talked about it, but it looked like it had a nice sized meal that it ate. So it just ate something. And it was also interesting the way the person reported it, because it was like the person had some limited knowledge of reptiles, because it was a very good picture. And they said it appeared to them like an Australian python, which they were referring to a blackhead python, which actually, if you don't know too much, their pattern coloration extremely similar. But that's not something that some layman or some person that doesn't know anything about reptiles would identify or use as an example. So I thought that was a very interesting, an unusual explanation.
Could have just been somebody who watches Brian Barczyk, because he has.
Yeah. Or if you watch Steve Irwin, right? Yeah. They watched Steve Irwin episode with him in Australia, so that's possible. But then there was following this about a week later, somebody posted a picture of a cobra in grass, and there was a lot of because I heard it from other people too, and when I first seen it too, I was like, why is it such a fairly close photo? Even if it's zoomed in, it's like it's somewhat approached. But it's also at a safe distance, which you could say, well, that's somebody that's just maybe afraid of snakes or whatever. But it's in freshly cut grass, and it looks posed, and it's not really trying to escape. If you came across a escaped cobra, even if it's one that's been, it's a fairly placid one in somebody's collection. I have hognose like this, are pretty placid. If you put them out in grass and then somebody fastly approached it, they're going to become defensive. So a cobra would hood up, or it's going to be either flight or fight, or it's going to try to take off. This was not doing either. So that one, a lot of people believe, was staged and posed because somebody is trying to rile up people or an anti-exotic person.
Well, of course, the news is going to do, it's sensationalism. It's not.
Everything's always sensationalized. I mean, I've been around it. I've paid attention. Gobies in Lake Erie and the Great Lakes. That was extremely sensationalized and actually pretty much just like propaganda. It falls into the definition of it, where they were saying that all the Great Lakes were going to be, the wild populations of native fish were going to be wiped out because gobies were going to eat and all the smaller prey, and that was going to eventually affect the other game fish. And that basically conclusion came from the idea that gobies eat a lot of people's bait constantly, and when you go fishing in certain areas, especially if you're fishing on the bottom, you wouldn't be able to even have a chance to get bit by anything else because there's so many gobies on the bottom, they'd immediately just start biting on whatever you threw down there, unless there's a very large, like shiner or something like that. But they're saying they're going to eat all of the really, like pretty much all more of the prey species and smaller chain food fish, and they're going to eat them all at a small size, and that the goby population is getting so big they're eventually just going to take over and everything was pretty much going to be gobies. And it ended up being not true at all. They're actually like a sculpin, and they just hang out on the bottom, and they eat a lot of mollusks, and they forage feed, and actually everything pretty much eats them, and they don't have the impact on anything other than zebra mussels, which actually aren't supposed to really be there, but zebra mussels actually clean the water, and so there's like, but I see that with a lot of things. But yeah, this stupid stuff, yeah, hopefully, it just kind of goes away. If they do pass legislation and it gets a little more strict, I don't really like it, but hopefully it just only affects hot keepers. And I don't really say that negatively because I don't think hot keepers need a lot more legislation. It's just like, one mistake happens or two mistakes happen and, they get a lot more strict. And so that hurts it for all of the very responsible people, which sucks because I don't really want to say, hey, yeah, these hot people need more legislation because of one person. It's like not really true. I mean, look at 40 to 60 people I think are killed a year by horses. It's like, you know what, horse people need more regulations now. Like just don't stand behind a horse, or don't do like, oh, maybe you just ban horses. Then that way nobody can get killed by horses if nobody has horses. But it doesn't. They don't really apply that kind of. They apply that logic more to niche markets and niche sectors, because they're not going to get a lot of blowback then. They're like, well, if this only affects a small percentage of people, we can go after them. If this affects a larger percentage, then maybe we won't. Things like feral cats. Like feral cats are brought up as to show bias. I mean, the feral cats aren't killing anybody or posing any threat, so this is not a really good comparison. But the bias to show feral cats is
still annoying.
Yeah, well, it's legislation being passed because what they use is such as like, well, it actually is a little relevant because of the tegu ban. There's a few tegus found in like a little part of Georgia where they were able to establish, and then they all freak out, like, well, we got to ban them. Meanwhile, it's just plain logic to understand and already know that feral cats are going to have a much more significant, and even just outdoor cats too that are not quite fully feral are going to have more impact on native wildlife than a tegu ever will. But there will never be any talking of limiting or putting legislation or restrictions on cat keepers.
Because cats are cute.
Yeah, well, it affects too many people. Imagine a person like, hey, we want to oppose a bill that says you can't keep cats outside anymore, and you might need a permit and this to get cats, and how much like that person, if they can be voted in by people, would not be for a second term. There'd be so many people that'd be like, who the heck is this guy? They'd get so much blowback, and it's such a large, part of the economy too, as far as when it comes to pets. When it comes to pets like dogs and cats, it might even be closer to $1 trillion industry when you take into account products, food, animals, and then every other aspect of dogs and cats. Like, whether it's like, because I even consider them like being, part of that economy if it's even on YouTube. So if a dog on YouTube's getting millions of views and that owner, they're taking in millions of dollars, that is because of, dogs and cats. I mean, shoot, just Instagram and TikTok, how many, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars are generated just from people posting animals on there and then having products and stuff like that for their pets and everything.
Well, that's the key. It's like you said, it absolutely, none of this has anything to do with the welfare of the animal or, the people that enjoy it. All this has to do is, if I make this law, are people going to be like, oh, thank God, because I hate those yucky reptiles, I'll vote for you. And that's why it's very important when these things start happening, you pay attention to USARC and you message these people and you show them the amount of people so that they go, wow, well, maybe I'm stepping on the wrong way because I'm not going to get votes from those people. But then after that, it's, am I going to make money off of this? So as long as people can still make money off of them having it, okay, so maybe I won't vote to get rid of it, but you'll have to get permits or you'll have to pay tax or you'll have to tag and do this. It's the sad part of that, but that's why it's very important. We always hope that at least it goes in the direction that you can pay some money and still keep your pets and do what you want to. But that's why it's so important to, when you see these things, you see people talk about it and they put it up and, hey, but don't just ignore it. It's true. If there's a link there to click and to send an email to this senator, right, to this person, you have to do it.
Yeah, emails and letters are the best way. Like a lot of times, because you can sign up, and if you don't want to sign up for like a membership for, like, say, USR, the one thing, if you ever see them pop up, just write a short email or letter and saying that, hey, this will impact, the reptile hobby and a lot of pet keepers and people that make money from selling pet products and stuff. Yes. And people who are doing it responsible, like, hey, there's millions of people like us, and almost all of us are responsible. And like this one hot keeper, venomous keeper, is not a reflection of how a lot of us behave. This and that. It's like if you want to put legislation or ban anything, and maybe just put it on zebra spitters specifically. Then maybe.
Well, this guy he ended up having he had to turn over his whole collection.
Yeah, they took his whole collection, from what I heard.
And it's like I can't remember if it was $3,000, but it was a lot of money involved in the fine that he had to pay because of this.
Yeah, and 2 months probation or something like that. So I mean, it could have been worse if somebody got like hit by a spitter and then it killed him. Like then he'd probably be in for manslaughter.
Oh yeah, like no, he got very lucky because as much as I like reptiles, I understand because if this thing would have came to my kids, like. I get it. It's scary. And I'm a true believer in you should be allowed to do whatever you want as long as it doesn't hurt somebody else. So seat belts, I'm not a big fan of a seatbelt law, even though I wear my seatbelt because it's the government telling you what to do to not hurt yourself. But speed limits, I'm for speed limits and not drinking and driving and all that because it's you doing something that could hurt somebody else. So having laws about things like this or something that could hurt somebody, but it's being smart about it and saying, okay, well, I can do a little bit of research and say that a leopard gecko is never going to kill somebody. And more than likely, if you live anywhere north of possibly, I mean, it still gets cold here. It's not going to survive outside. So there's a
lot of people that are going to survive out there. So basically, the one thing I'd write letters to people to tell them, like, to urge them to revise these, laws that they're too broad, too generalized, and way too strict, and it's going to end up impacting tons of people. And there's going to be about 5% of the population everywhere that's going to really hate.
You're thinking that they have a heart whatsoever. No, they don't. They could care less if they're hurting you. But
yeah, it's true. Yeah, the politics is pretty horrible. I don't think
you have to show them is there is a number of people that they're not going to get a vote from, and they have got to weigh that against. Is there enough people that care that are going to stop voting for me, and is that going to outweigh the amount of people that don't vote? Period. And which, unfortunately, a lot of the people that care about reptiles tend to probably be people that don't vote or get out there and have it. But you have to scare them into that. You have to scare them into, you do this and you will never have my vote again, or you will never. There are so many people. That's where you have to hit them. You have to hit them.
I think you're right there. I think that's a very good take. That's definitely a good, definitely some good interpretation and knowledge of that to, definitely apply it to when you write these kind of letters, to keep that in mind.
Yeah, because I mean, again, I'm not being political about COVID or whatsoever, but a lot of COVID shutdowns hurt the little people. They didn't really care so much about, because Walmart was allowed to stay open and still keep making money. So
a lot of the places were, and now now we're back at like peak levels, but now we're open and like doing things. But as long as people it's tough because with that kind of stuff you gotta be careful. You don't want anybody kind of like me, like. My one friend thinks I had it at some point. I don't think I did, but he's not a doctor. But I have a compromised immune system, so I'm definitely trying not to get it. But luckily, I'm a reptile breeder, so for me, I don't leave my house much.
Yeah, no. Again, like I said, I have my opinion of it, and I don't care what if you are the most scared person of it, and you want to stay in your house your rest of your life to stay with it. Hey, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong because I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I don't even believe to remotely think that I can tell you how to think this is or what it is. I'm not a scientist, but my opinion, I'll take my chance and I'll do what I do. I got the vaccine, and I'm not even one of those people that but I wanted to stop wearing my mask. I wanted to be able to go, I don't have to wear my mask. I got my vaccine. So, and I like to travel. I need to be able to travel. You can't do that without a vaccine. So, we don't want to get on this topic. Like I said,
that's a big one.
Yeah, that's the only thing anybody will now talk about. This is Trey doesn't believe in COVID. That's not what I'm saying. So, yeah,
they'll change the font to the video. Yeah. They'll put that on.
My thumbnail will be Palmetto State Geckos. You're an idiot because you think COVID was real. No, it's not the case. By all means, It is what it is. Okay, so it could possibly happen. I mean, that we're getting to a way of life where people are just passing laws and not even thinking about it. So please, if you're watching this, be smart, be involved. You know, Brian Barczyk, again, I don't care what people think about him. He has a broad spectrum of people he talks to. He has a lot of followers, and he has got more involved with conservation and telling people, hey, you've got to fight this, and you should. You know, he's got millions of followers. I have like 60, and I'm telling you 60 that if you watch this, pay attention. And when they say this, do something about it. This is all of us. If you're watching this, you love the same stuff for the reason. So do it, please. The next thing I wanted to ask you is, you know, what do you think you still have that you want to accomplish, and however many years you stay in this, maybe till you're 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, till the day you die, you stay in reptiles. What do you think there is on the horizon that you still want to try to accomplish before you just say, I'm done, somebody buy these, take them all, I'm done? Or are you just at a level where you're just happy with you're going to be doing what you're doing? Maybe you'll work some new lines. Is there any huge goal you want to, not with, you know, again, you don't have to divulge any projects, just, is there another level that you want to reach before you say, I'm done?
Yeah, the audio keeps breaking up and the camera keeps breaking up. Oh. It just started breaking up just now.
You still there? Can you hear me?
Bye.
Let's give it a second. Maybe it'll work its way out. You're coming back a little bit.
Yeah, it seems pretty normal now.
All right, I'll edit that out. Like I was saying, I don't know how much longer you plan to be in this hobby and be in what you're doing, maybe till the day you die. But before that happens, before you're done, what do you still think that you would like to accomplish before that happens that you haven't done yet? Or are you at a level like, hey, I'm comfortable if I do this for the next 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, I've done what I needed to do when I was here?
I like that question. I think I want to see as much as I can before I finally die. And that goes for really just like, line breeding and just like looking at and just seeing as many new hognose morphs and even gecko morphs as I can. Just going to shows, meeting more people, seeing how things like, because like social media has made this a lot more fun. Because being able to interact with people and then, like, you know, share the memes, that makes things a lot more fun, a lot more interesting. But overall, yeah, I want to make more memes, do more funny stuff. Actually, I got some ideas to do more things. I want to start doing YouTube videos. And just to see how far leopard geckos and hognose morphs can go. And my end goal is to really I would like to buy up more property too. And have, like, because my back area, I have actually a decent amount of acreage, and old owners cut it all for whatever reason, and so I'm letting that all grow back, and so there's a lot more wildlife, a lot more, you know, mostly just insects, bees, and like a lot of types of rodents. I got like so many rodents back there, but I end up, like, probably a lot of my money and stuff I have, I'm going to probably I'd like to donate a lot of it probably to the Nature Conservancy that buys up land and basically, you know, turns it back into, like, you know, national parks. And it's not even really, I don't think it's really so much national parks, but the Nature Conservancy buys up land, and some of it's conjoined to parks and everything. And some of it, it's like public and people can go and enjoy it. A lot of times it's, I think, something more interesting, like something that's more of an interest for birders, because I've been to a few of the Nature Conservancy sites. There's actually one in Kansas I want to go to. So it'd be cool to have a lot of, say, money I've made from reptiles over the years go back into buying up land that can conserve a lot of that. Because a lot of those, the land that actually ends up getting bought up is really good areas for waterfowl, and there's a lot of prairie habitat. In some of these areas, there's a lot of hognose there. That's how I actually found out about the Nature Conservancy, was going out herping, and I started seeing a lot of their signs and stuff, and I thought that was pretty cool. So pretty much just line breeding as much as I can, social media, conservation.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's there's a lot of places that need that. That's awesome. Yeah. Have you been to? I watch a lot of your videos that you make on Instagram of you walking and herping just at night. Is that you just out for exercise and you're seeing these things while you're going, or is that just you're out there specifically to see these things?
I'm just out there specifically to see them. There's actually a spot that's not too far from me that the national park bought back from a guy that had a junkyard. My dad actually remembered the guy. He said he was a very angry, mean dude. And my dad would always try to buy parts from him. My dad, we used to work on a lot of cars when he was younger. And but they actually, that site was actually kind of known as like, trying to think of the word. I can't remember it, but it was a contaminated site by chemicals. So the National Park, Cuyahoga Valley, they actually bought it all back, and they actually dug out a lot of the old barrels and they trucked it out to be properly disposed of. But then when we talked to people, we asked them, like, on a biohazard level of like 1 to 10, like what? He goes, oh, it's mostly just oil and stuff, and he goes, there's nothing like real extreme chemicals. He goes, it was like a 2. He goes, it wasn't bad at all. But when they removed all that, they actually put a bunch of like vernal pools in there, like ones that they made were handmade with, like, they dug them out, they put in logs and stuff, and you're allowed to go back there, and they actually have some parking spots, but it's like so like, innocuous, and you don't even know it's there. Nobody knows about it. And I go back there all the time on good nights, not all the time, but like especially in the spring, and there's all kinds of amphibians. Like the wildlife has really returned to that area. There's like gray tree frogs. Like actually, I got a ton of gray tree frogs in my yard. They're like everywhere, and so that's another reason I let the grass grow out. And there's a small vernal pool back there, and that's why if you ever look at my videos, every now and then you'll see gray tree frogs. I got them everywhere.
Yeah.
And over in that spot too, there's gray tree frogs. A lot of spotted and Jefferson salamanders, newts, green frogs, bullfrogs. Seeing a lot of birds are back there too. A lot of wildlife's returning, so it's really cool to see that. So it's just me, just kind of like going out, just to be outside, and hopefully I come across anything. And if I get a little bit of exercise, that's a bonus. That's usually never the intent of me going out. I was doing that for a while. I was going on like pretty vigorous mountain bike rides, and that was kind of fun. But into me, every time I do that, even if I am exercising, and I found spots herping doing that.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I see like this lock, and the old lock was like all dilapidated, so I like hurry up, and I was like slamming my brakes. I'm like, yep, there's gonna be a bunch of stuff around here to flip, and I was finding milk snakes and garter snakes.
Your friends are like, man, come on, let's go. And you're like, no, oh, y'all go without me.
Pretty much, yeah. So I usually always go by myself. Every now and then I go with somebody, but my hours are so odd, especially as like sometimes like, well, I gotta work on this, and it's kind of like when I used to work on geckos and did geckos like full time with my dad, and we were traveling so much. It was like stupid. I would do it a lot where like I'm gonna work 20 hours straight, and I'd work 20 hours straight, and then I would sleep for like 10 hours, and then I'd watch like, and this was like when I was younger and stuff, so I'd probably watch like some shows then for like 4 or 5 hours, then work, and then like and then I would go to sleep, and then there'd always be like 2 or 3 days a week where I'd work like 20 hours straight, and it was like not really good for my schedule. So I don't do that anymore or anything like. Well, sometimes I still do, kind of, yeah. But yeah, sometimes it's just like well, this has to get done, and I was like, I gotta get all this stuff cleaned, or I want to feed all these, and this has to be done, and I was like, I'm not going to stop until it's done, and I'm going to take breaks here and there, but so.
I'm the same way, but I only have 50. I couldn't imagine, and I make it harder on myself because, I feed each one individually for the day or for the every other day. I don't put a bunch in there and let them, and I clean up and then I try to hand handle each of them at least once a week. And so I make it harder on myself. It's about a 2-hour chore for me, but I got 600. I couldn't imagine, you know, the amount. And that's just your geckos. Like, I don't even know how many,
right. Hog nose. But it's with like, well, leopard geckos, they're just starting hatching. So like 300 of these leopard geckos are like, you know.
Every day though.
Right. Yeah. They're pretty fresh hatchlings. Well, again, if I didn't have help, there would be no way. I'd be begging somebody to buy 90% of my collection, like tomorrow. But I have a good amount of help. My mom does a fantastic job. Then I have some friends that help me part-time. And the other thing is, too, the more you get and the longer you do it, you'll actually find, like, say, like, even years down the road, I bet once you have, say, even double the amount of leopard geckos, you'll actually find you'll be able to do double the amount than what it took you to do, say, half the amount years prior. Even though I feel like I don't move quick, sometimes, like, I'll go in there, you know, I'll be like, hey, this needs to be clean. I'm like, what's taking so long? I don't really say it like that because it's pretty rude. But I don't go in there like, hey, you guys aren't working fast or you don't know what you're doing. But I understand they just, like, I have a motion for it because I've been doing it since I was 12. I'm like, well, I'll set up these tubs and I get them all prepped with peroxide, and I take the paper towel, I go up and around, and I know exactly all the motions, and I'm like, boom, 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 and I do it like a factory line, and I'm like, sometimes I'm doing double or triple than what other people are doing, and but then they eventually will start to get to that point the more they do it, because like I'll do even grabbing crickets. I'd have people that'd be like, you know, helping me, and they've been grabbing crickets for a year, and I still do it like twice as fast as them. And because I get like
sucks. Like I hate trying to get. Oh my god!
Well, I get a cupping motion while you fling the egg crate into the cups, and you get like kind of like a cupping motion where you kind of like just graze your hand over the substrate, and you get the crickets in the corner. You put them in a cup real quick. You go over and over. But it's just like habits you kind of learn. Because some people are like, how do you do that fast? I'm like, I don't know. I was like, I just do. I was like, I've been doing it for a very long time though. And that's actually my actual response to most, because they're like, wow, you do that like pretty fast. Like, can I watch it? I'm like, well, it's not even doing anything special. I'm just really really methodical and fast with the motions because I've done this so many times, And I was like, I know too, like not to be too particular on certain things.
Yeah, no, that's good. So that leads into the last segment of what I'm gonna bug you about is advice for new people like myself, the people that are just getting into it or, have been doing it for a little while. What is something that you would tell somebody like me when it comes to what do I need to hear to keep going or to, make my life a little easier or, just something you want to impart in somebody who's younger than you at this and you want it to stick in their head. Hey, Jeff told me to do this, and it's made my life so much better.
Well, the one big thing would be like definitely tell a lot of people quarantine. I actually think nowadays it's actually easier to get into certain species. I feel like people are a lot more helpful now than they were years ago. Well, for one, it's very easy to connect with people with social media. Back in the late 90s, early 2000s, like, you could email people, but, it wasn't the same. And so quarantine, definitely, do your research and everything. And that's such a cliche, easy one. It's so generalized, but I mean, it's an obvious, but it is true. Just another thing is too is just to take things at your own pace and slowly. Like I've had people too. They're like, oh, I only breed like this many yams. Like I only have like 10 hognose. You have all these hognose. I was like, well, I started out with like, one, then I got two. And I was like, then I bred those two. And I was like, then I started trying to buy more, and it took me forever. But it really wasn't about that. Originally when I was buying and breeding hognose too, there wasn't like, you couldn't make money off of breeding hognose. If you did, you were making like $50 at the end of the year. You weren't really, but the whole thing is like, yeah, for one, to like do species you like, treat it as like a hobby, it's a hobby that can pay you, but put money into it first and definitely have money that you have income that you can set aside or, don't let it strain you financially because that'll add a stress to it. So say if you're like, because I've seen some people like they have a bunch of stuff and then they don't have enough money if like a vet bill comes up or something like that, something comes up. and or they even have to sell animals. I don't like that's not a good approach.
Yeah. Get a care credit card is what I'd get. That way it's very easy to get one, and it's for vet bills. That's what I try to tell anybody I talk to.
Oh, interesting.
It's going to happen. You're going to, and that is only for it. It works for some, but pets and going to the vet. And I'm telling you, it will save your life if you all of a sudden you have a $2,000 bill. Well, you've got a $2,000 credit card that you can pay off if you need to.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely quarantine. You know, take it easy, take it slow. Don't be impulsive. You know, look for reputable people to buy stuff from.
Mm-hmm.
You know, definitely, again, the quarantine thing is a big one. You know, good proper hygiene, have like money set aside, have, you know, just make sure you have good setups and take things at your own pace and, you know, just have fun with it. And again, like you said, it's good to have people that also enjoy it too, that, you know, you can talk and converse with.
Yeah. But that's a good thing about the internet though, is, you know, it's cooler in person to show off and to do your stuff, but I can talk to you, and that's the best thing about you. What I like so much is when I tell you something. Like I remember, I got a bold stripe, my first one, and I freaked out about how beautiful this thing was. And I sent you a picture, and you took the time to send me a voice saying, "Oh, crisp, clear lines and very defined." Man, you have no idea what that did for me, and how, you know, oh my God, this he's amazing. So, you know, I appreciate that. And it's, you know, it's something that helps move you along.
Yeah. I'm a bit introverted, but that's the thing over the years. I mean, it's really nice to talk to people about stuff. And it's like, so like when somebody sends me, like say you send me that bolt stripe and they had like really, you know, cool qualities. I was like, well, I could just respond cool, or I could tell them why I think that particular bolt stripe looks really good. And that's a, you know, much, you know, better way to converse with somebody versus just saying cool. Then I just go back to, you know, watching an anime or feeding a hognose snake or something, like, you know. So it's like, you know, we're, you know, people are social, and especially if you're on social media, you're there to talk and stuff, and so you're another person has the likewise interests. And so yeah, I seen a very cool, nice looking bolt stripe. So I was like, yeah, I'm going to tell them why I think this bolt stripe's cool, the qualities I like on it. And that's also fun for me too, versus just saying it's cool, because then I'm also, you know, reciting what I actually believe, what I think about the animal. And, you know, that's the other thing too, is like, you know, it's really just, I wanted to say something else about that too. I had a good idea, and now I don't know where it went. Maybe I'll come back in a second.
It's funny because, you know, a lot of us got into this because of a childhood love for reptiles or for lizards, or, you know, because so it kind of comes out sometimes when you get something like that and you almost act like a kid and people are like, oh, you're bragging. No, like I want to share this because, well, like I want somebody to look at this and go, man, it's like when you were a kid, when you found a pretty rock and you said, hey man, look at my pretty rock. It's innate, because this is a hobby that preys on the inner child in you that maybe didn't get to have, like you were lucky enough to have my mom bought me a snake when I was like 6 years old, and I had it for half an hour before my father made me take it back. So I didn't have that as a kid. So it's, you know, I can see it, and I can see it with other people. I can see it with myself. I'm an adult 98% of the time. I have children. I have a pretty high up job and on a corporate level, and I have to be an adult all the time. But, you know, this gives me the ability to be more of a kid again, and I love it. And so that's why I show people, like, I love Instagram, because, you know, hey, look, man, this is like, so it's great to have people like you when somebody does that, you say the things you do, because that's all we want. That's all. Whenever somebody shows or puts on, all we want is somebody to go, oh man, I love that too. It's beautiful.
Yeah, you gotta be honest too, because like sometimes somebody will send me like a normal hog nose, and they're like, "This is really cool. It's an awesome morph," or, you know, whatever this. I can't be like, "Oh yeah, it is." I'll be like, "Well, that's a normal." I was like, "It's very cute." I was like, "But, you know," I was like, "They just, you know," I was like, "There's some variation between the normals," and I was like, "That's a nice looking normal," you know. And that's what I was about to say, because that's a rewarding part of it too. Is even like, because people show me stuff that they have that they didn't even get from me, and that's, you know, I'm totally okay with that. You know, it happens a lot. Especially, well, the only time I don't really like it is, say somebody's like, hey, I want to buy like $7,000 of hognose from you, and then they're like, well, I didn't want to buy them from you, so I bought them from this person. Here, look how great they are. It doesn't really, well, mine will eventually sell, so it doesn't really bother me too much, but it kind of makes me wonder, like, well, is this person trying to irritate me? Maybe but that happens sometimes anyway. I don't expect, and it's actually good news anyway, because generally when that does happen, they're buying it from a friend, or they're buying it from, say if they're buying it, it's the exact same morph. I'm like, well, now there's that much, there's those 2 animals, or those 3-4 animals are now off the market, and now mine will be more likely to sell, and mine eventually will sell regardless. I don't even have enough of them anyway, so I really didn't miss out on anything. I just missed out on that particular transaction. My transaction will now just be with somebody else, and I don't expect to get every transaction. But
I have the same, and again, as small a time as I've been there, I've had the exact same thing where I had somebody talk to me about some of the baby supergiants I have that I don't even have posted, but people ask, and I say, well, I'll have it, and they talk to me, ask questions, and this is just one person in particular so far. But then they come back and they're like, oh, hey, I ended up buying 2 supergiants from Calico, where mine come from originally, and then want to talk to me about them. And it's the best thing I've taken from is it teaches you humility. And I, unlike you, cannot guarantee that mine will sell because I've yet to start selling really. So it teaches you a good lesson in, there's different people out there, and they're like that person. She doesn't think that she was hurting my feelings, or just really like.
Yeah, that's the whole thing. Most people, they're not trying to purposely do it.
Yeah. You gave them so much good information. They felt they could talk to you about it. So now they're back here talking to you about it, and I look at that and I say, okay, well, at least I gave that person a good enough feeling that they think that they can come back to me. Because I'd love to help her, tell her the right way to take care of it. And that's what I'm doing this for anyway. So you always have that. Are you kidding me? Like you talked to me for 2 hours about it. Then you went and got almost the exact same, but then you roll past it and you be happy that somebody out there is going to eventually say, and that person could come back next year and buy 3 more from me.
Yeah. Sometimes they do, and it's like, again, it's like it's just something that happens sometimes. You're not going to get every sale or work with every person. It's like me with hognose. I'm like, if anybody buys a hognose, I know people that buy a bunch of hognose. They don't buy any from me. That's they're adding to the hobby and stuff. And the people they're buying from are people that I'm also connected with and everything. So that's just how it works. And then there's vice versa. There's people like that buy mostly from me. But yeah, that's a cool thing though, is talking to these people. It's because I talk to a lot of people, and sometimes these people don't, buy anything from me. And like the one guy, he calls me up like every few months usually, and he'll even bring it up that he doesn't buy anything from me. And I'm like, oh, that's fine. I don't really care. I was like, I'm just working on something anyway. And he goes, yeah, but you helped me with a lot of stuff, because he had some questions about health with certain snakes he had. And, I was like, well, I don't really, mind it. Some people think I do, because they're like, oh, I don't want to be bothering you. And I'm like, you really aren't. I was like, if you send me like 20 messages a day, and it's like pretty much every other day, I was like, and it's like all the time, I was like, that might be starting hurting my amount of time. I was like, then that might actually become an issue. But aside from that, it's really nice to have people too to come back and say, hey, you helped me with this. I didn't buy anything from you, but you helped me with my leopard gecko. It was sick, and now it's doing good. Or, hey, I bought a hognose from you. I named it Harold. Here it is in this fake skull. I got it from you a year ago. I love hearing that. Like, oh, that's pretty cool. The one girl named her one hognose, it's like his red face is Elmo. I was like, that's funny, that's cute. She's like, this is how Elmo's doing. I like to hear about it. And then there will be somebody else like, hey, I bought all these hognose, from you. They're 3 years old now. I bred them, and I produced like 30 babies. That's equally as cool. Actually, I bought and they're like, your stuff did really well. I like hearing about that just as much as I like about hearing Elmo in a tree branch. I thought that, they're all pretty cool. Or Harold in a skull.
And that's more than anything. And if I sell geckos, that's fine. It's great. More than anything, I want people to look at what I do and go, oh, hey, Trey's doing it right. he's making great things. But it's really cool to have, like, even at where I'm at right now, I've got one person who's like a fan of my stuff, and he messages me, and he lives in Tennessee where I went to school, and he's like the coolest guy, and he tells me his stuff, and I see myself 6 months ago, and I'm like, man, this is great. Like, and I'll talk to him for whatever, and it's like it's the coolest thing to me to have that person. His name's Bryce. To that goes, man, I love your stuff, and and he wants to talk about his stuff, and he wants to get my ideas, and yeah, it's the coolest thing. I love it.
Yeah, oh yeah, it is. It's good to because sometimes people like I don't like it. I get a decent amount of messages, but it's it generally as long as you take breaks and stuff too, it's like it doesn't really become overwhelming. It's actually pretty nice to hear about from other people and like what they're doing and what they're working on and stuff. There are certain days where I'm like, yeah, it's like I could probably go, but then you just don't pick up your phone that day. But usually I still do, even when I'm not in the mood.
It's funny because when you're sending me voice messages, I can hear your phone going off like the entire time, and you're like,
it's been bad lately. I've been because I do more and more voice messages because I'm like, well, I have a lot to say about this, and when I'm typing, I'll fat thumb it a lot, or I'll hit typos, and I'm like, this will be a lot faster just to say, and I might be able to, definitely put some, better descriptiveness behind it. And I've been doing that a lot more lately. And then, like, yeah, I mean, I've been usually that isn't happening, but I feel like the past like 3, 4, 5 days I've been doing voice messages. The one person I even said, like, I'm not going to send you voice. Somebody was sending me memes at the same time. And I guess they had a folder of them, and they were just like, I'll send this one, this one, this one, this one. And it was just like, do.
Well, okay. So on that same line, the last question I'm going to ask you is, what advice do you have for the ones that have been doing it a long time? Like, everybody always thinks about that, but what would you say to the ones out there now? And again, it doesn't have to be controversial, or what do you say to them to keep them at the level they're at?
Well, I think a lot of people that are at the higher level and stuff in this stuff, they don't even want my advice.
Maybe not even a high level, just somebody who's been doing it 5, 6 years.
Yeah. Well, and the one thing I get, well, this is a little related, but a little off topic. I do get actually people asking me for advice that have actually been doing this. Some people actually have been doing it longer than me. And usually it hasn't pertained to things that they're not as experienced with. It might be certain health things with a species they have. It might be with exports, shipping, and stuff like that. So, I mean, just to be open-minded, but I mean, learn from others. One person has been a huge influence in the hobby as a whole, and he's really good at breeding, just content quality and all that. Is that Justin Quebeca? But he's ball pythons, but he has a very nice setup, very nice building. Didn't spare any expense, and it's a very good image, and it's actually definitely probably made many people want to up their game because it's a lot more enjoyable when you have things organized. And that's one big advice actually is organization. I'm not the most organized person. I try to be all the time, and I know it's extremely important. Being organized in pretty much everything you do when it even comes to reptile breeding, just organizing my breeding with hognose snakes has drastically improved my fertility, which you'd think, well, how does organization do that? It's like, well, you're not going to miss breedings. You're going to know when to, breed. You're going to have the actual knowledge of when they paired, because as soon as they pair, I mark it. What they paired to and the exact day they locked, I want to know their shed cycles around then. When a baby hognose is growing, though, for instance, I don't care when it sheds. It's that important to me. Some people do. Sometimes customers want to know, and sometimes they go, I don't know. I don't have that information, but I can give you a good idea. Or maybe, in certain cases, the snake shed 3 days ago, so now it's very easy to know. But organization and just learning from others, try not to get too caught up in, the negative aspects, negative, communities, be patient with people. I see a lot of especially on Facebook, it's very known to be, it's pretty, known that people get attacked. I mean, they make memes about it all the time. Some of those memes are very funny. They're like, shows like somebody just asking a simple question, like the new person just asks a simple question, and it shows somebody getting beat up, and it shows somebody with a phone. It's like me, who's been in the group for 10 years, watching somebody answer them, and the person answering them, is pounding on the other person. And I've seen many variations of that kind of meme, and it's true. And I've seen
crazy. It's ridiculous. It's not doing anything but hurting everybody to beat up. And that's why I don't even go on Facebook. And for everybody watching, if you want a place that you can go and talk, and there's Luna Geckos has a Discord called Safe Space, excuse me. Yeah, you can go to his Instagram and you can get a link to that, and you can get on there. There's a bunch of us on there, and you can't ask a stupid question. There's a lot of people on there. There's Elite Geckos, Jay from Eco Geckos on there, and then you have G at Luna Geckos, and then myself, and we're all on there answering any question, talking, showing pictures. It's so much better than Facebook. Facebook, you get annihilated for saying one thing. But God forbid you talk about a heating mat and you get on the now. Yes, and there's a lot of people out there like Lively Rose Reptiles. They're making enclosures that are UV and beautiful and great, and there's other ways of doing it, and they're nice about it though. They'll explain to you their section of it, but there's those out there that will want to murder you in front of your children because you use a heat mat. And it's not the way you change people's mind. It's not how you convince somebody to do something you feel is the right way. But it's the same way with the opposite way. There's other people that also believe that, heat mats are the absolutely only way because it's the only way it's been done forever. And but the best thing about geckos is they will survive regardless, and they will be happy for the most part, as long as they're eating and getting what they need.
Yeah, if you have like a really nice naturalistic setup and you have a heating element that's say like ceramic or overhead light, and the thermal regulation gradient is on point, versus say if it's a heating mat and it's say equally on point, the animal is going to thrive in both conditions if taken care of well.
Yeah.
But another thing too, I'd be avoidance of or keep leery of is just like being organized. And then there's a lot of like confirmation bias coming up where people like want to conform to like other like, hey, this person thinks like I do. It's not so much about so much evidence. But the other thing is too, people can take like evidence from things and then they kind of twist it. Like the overhead lighting for UV lighting for leopard geckos is very interesting, because it would be the exact opposite 15. If you went on gecko forums and started saying, oh, UV lighting is the way, you would just get killed by everybody. Because for one, albino leopard geckos, they're sensitive to light because they're nocturnal. But then there's also, I have the book, I think, right over there. They'll come up, here's the thing, like African fat-tail geckos. Somebody tried coming in an African fat-tail gecko group and talk about UV lighting. African fat-tail geckos, I've talked to collectors. I know people have been over there. These things do not like light. They do not come out during the day. If they do, it's an extremely rare occasion. They're extremely vulnerable during it. They do not benefit from the UV lighting. The extra UV, will they absorb some D3 from it? Yes, because that's naturally how their body, that's how most organisms respond to D3. And the extra D3 is going to be stored in their system, and it's not going to be utilized or used right away. It's like if I took vitamin D3, my D3 levels are going to become elevated. If I go out in the sun, my D3 levels will become elevated.
You're breaking up and losing connection a little bit.
Are we there? Is it good?
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay. So that person, and because then they told me that, I was like, I know people that actually collect them. They said they won't even go looking for them on nights with full moons because it's too bright. Just a full moon night, there's significantly less fat-tail geckos. Pitch black nights are the best. And then they said, well, we have evidence. And I'm like, well, can you show me this report, this study that shows that they come out during the day? And they never responded or came back. And I think it's because they probably confused it with another species. But leopard geckos, somebody actually had a report saying that leopard geckos have actually been observed sunning or basking a little bit. And that's actually not any reason to say, well, they can use UV, like UV lighting is going to be beneficial now. Because where they come from in like a lot of these areas in Pakistan, where a lot of our natural macularis come from areas where it can get pretty cold during the winter, especially at nights. So if a leopard gecko is partially basking because it's desperate for heat, it's like, well, that's because nature's imperfect and there's natural selection and there's a lot of harshness. It's not basking because it really wants to. That's its option at the moment to get some heat. So it has to partially expose some of its body. Will it get some D3 from that? Yes. You know, of course it will, because that's how their body naturally responds to D3. Again, I could have actually an abundance of D3 in my system. If I go out in the sunlight, my D3 levels will now increase again, and it will store in the body. And whether it's ingested and stored extra. Now, the only difference is when you're supplementing, you got to be a little more careful, because when you're supplementing, that's direct ingestion, and you can actually give an oversupply. You can't really OD on D3 from like ultraviolet rays. But the other thing is too, a lot of leopard geckos don't, they're a bit sensitive to light, especially albinos. They're naturally nocturnal, and these rare occasions of a leopard gecko basking aren't a reason to say, well, now they are benefiting from it. Wild leopard geckos have cryptosporidium. They're not going to benefit from giving them cryptosporidium in captivity. They're actually going to do extremely negative, especially because they're going to be reinfecting and re-exposing themselves to it because they're in a smaller environment. And they're going to be tracking it underwater, so they're going to get like hyper-infected. The other thing is, too, there's actually a lot of leopard geckos that succumb to the symptoms and what cryptosporidium does to them, unfortunately. It looks pretty sad. And you'll see some of these leopard geckos actually even found in the wild, because there'll be, the one book, it's, I forget what it's called, but so I should just grab it, but it's all natural leopard gecko book from, I think it was written by, I think, two people, but I think it's originally from a European person wrote it. But anyway, it's, shows some leopard geckos in there, and it appears like they found them during the day, and it looks like it's out in daylight and stuff. But these leopard geckos are definitely succumbing to, cryptosporidium. And so it's like, well, that's not a good example of a leopard gecko coming out if it's like, extremely sickly, and it's pretty much, like the one gecko is probably about 2 weeks out from death. So, that's not a good, example, but they'll sometimes use those examples because, like, the UV groups are becoming more popular, and naturally, they're like, well, this is a natural way for them to absorb heat. And it's like, well, yeah, a leopard gecko, they're actually going to be absorbing heat from the hot ambient temp for most of the time where they come from. It's very hot during the day. They don't even need to even sit anywhere near where the sun was hitting, because some of those surfaces are probably going to be actually like 150 degrees.
Yeah.
But,
But it's the thing is, and again, totally my opinion, but the major element inside of especially leopard geckos is survive. Do what it takes to survive. And I feel like if they could get all their food and all their heat and all their nutrients and all and mating done inside a hole, they would never come out of the hole.
Well,
because it's safer in that hole. They don't care about beauty of seeing like we do. It's us putting our emotion onto them.
Yeah, you're right. It's a lot of it's aesthetics and projecting in what I think an animal would like. Like, well, a lot of people equate space to happiness. Animals that are more cognitive enjoy space, such as, well, you actually could take me as like, I'm not the best example. I live in my living area is 400 square feet, but my areas where I breed my animals, I have about 4,000 square feet for them. But, that's my hobby. That's where I have my stuff. Where I live, everything, I'm like, well, what's the point of having a bunch of, for me, I'm like, well, if I have like a decent-sized house, I'm going to have all these extra rooms. Well, I have an office. It'd be nice to keep that maybe a little organized. But I'm basically going to be using the bathroom. I have the kitchen and my bedroom. So I made my bedroom, my living room area, then I have my kitchen, and I have a couple bathrooms in here for my building, and everything else is stuff for my reptiles. My living space is barely 400 square feet, and it's plenty of space for me. But yeah, the thing is, leopard geckos, they do not like open you know, to just open vast areas. They don't, you know, get enjoyment from that. They probably, you know, get some enjoyment, and their body probably likes it, you know, when they're drinking water, when they're hunting or eating. But yeah, it's actually pretty evident that they do like staying in certain position, or just like staying in, like, say, a hole or a crack or a crevice, and they prefer that because that's actually how they evolved, like in the wild, to actually, that's why they defecate in certain areas, because they retreat back to their territory. And it probably actually, I think it evolved with actually Cryptosporidium, because the natural populations of them have Cryptosporidium. A lot of people, that's where Cryptosporidium actually comes from, because it's usually species specific. African fat tails have it, leopard geckos have it in the wild. Well, if a leopard gecko is pooping in a lot of its own same area, it's going to really reinfect itself with Cryptosporidium. So it actually does it a really good service to, if it has some of it in its system and its body's keeping it in remission, because it's you know, lower amounts, or amounts that their body can deal with, they're going to poop away from where their territory is. Then they go back to their territory. Male leopard geckos even have their pores that secrete, you know, those pheromones, because that's actually a territorial thing. The male leopard geckos stay in probably precise areas. They don't probably travel a whole far out. Like, even like I said, those milk snakes, I find the same milk snakes underneath the sign every year. I lift it up, and they're there the majority of the time. When they're not there, they're probably in other fissures or crevices in the ground, or they're going to another particular burrow, or, like, you know, crevice, or like that, or they're going out to, like, possibly drink. A lot of times, in the leopard geckos too, they'll find them out in the wild. Like, they found them in brush, like thick brush at night, because they're probably hunting locusts and arachnids in this brush. And the reason they're coming out and hunt is so they can find food, because maybe not all the food will, you know, go into the crevice wherever they're hanging out. Although I'm sure that's a big part of it. They're hanging out in their spot, you know, a little arachnid or a beetle walks down there and they'll eat it. So, yeah, overall, you know, the only time they're ever leaving their crevices or spots is to, you know, defecate, you know, find water. Although some of the crevices they're in, there might be some moisture. You know, and that's probably where they get a lot of their moisture, because where it's from, it's pretty hot and arid. So they probably actually go into these crevices and where there's some moisture, and, you know, maybe lick up some moisture or whatever. And, you know, it's basically survival. It's not for enjoyment or recreational activities. If you show me evidence of a leopard gecko sitting out on a rock and enjoying the sunset because it really likes it, and it really likes this open space, then I'll change my opinion. But until then, they like utilizing. And it's good to have a couple areas for them to hide, you know. And if somebody wants to make a big, like, that's the thing too. I have friends that have hognose snakes. They breed them. They breed them like me. They have them in rack systems. They maybe have a paper towel tube, or maybe they don't have anything. And then when they want to hide, they let them burrow. And then I have people that show me this huge enclosure with, like, you know, their hognose in there, named like Charles or whatever. And they have, like, flowers and, like, all this different, like, you know, hide spots and, like, all this elaborate stuff. And I'm like, well, as long as it's eating and it's not, you know, too much, or, you know, overwhelming it. And they're like, no, it eats. I'm like, well, then perfect. If it eats, then that's great. You can keep it like that. You can decorate it with all kinds of flowers and stuff. Just make sure it doesn't accidentally try to eat one for whatever reason. Like, you get some, like, scent from a mouse on it.
Yeah.
And other than that, you're fine.
Yeah, it's. I mean, do it the way you feel, but just realize you're projecting a little bit. You know, again, like, I keep Odin, is my super giant, in a 40-gallon aquarium, but I do that because maybe the size of the area, like, you know, like fish, will depend on how big they can grow. So I try to keep him in the largest, just in case that will influence how much he grows. So, but it's also because, you know, he's a big guy. I want him to have, I like, for me, I like to look at the 40-gallon with all the stuff in there. You know, I like that. Does he enjoy it? He stays inside of his hide most of the time. And now at night he does get out and walk around, but that's, I mean, that's not something I debate, because however you want to do it. I mean, it's you. As long as you're treating your animals with respect and they're feeding and they're growing and they're healthy, it's the way you want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny because that's, again, how critical people have gotten. Like, even if you have an animal now in certain aspects that's obviously doing well and it's extremely healthy and very well taken care of, some people might still have a problem with it. because they think that should be kept a different way. But those people, you could always supersede them in a certain way. Like say, because I had this one person was like, you know, they have a very large enclosure for their one pet. So it's very easy for them to, you know, say, talk down to somebody with a smaller enclosure because they think I have a bigger, nicer looking enclosure with ample space. That means my animal's happier or I care for my animal more. But, you know, I also have a back room where it's a sliding glass door that is going to turn into an incubator room. I could actually convert that to a naturalistic enclosure, and it's walking, it's huge, and I could put a leopard gecko in that and set up a scrub, sub-savanna, rocky terrain like Pakistan, like habitat in there, and make my enclosure about 80 times larger than hers, and then tell her that she's actually not doing it right. You know, then somebody could say, well, those leopard geckos in the wild, you know, they are doing, but the leopard geckos, if you were actually talking about that, like the argument of a wild animal being happy, even though leopard geckos aren't cognitive, the one thing is all wild leopard geckos at some point, I mean, not every single one of them, because if one dies at, say, 2 weeks old, it may not have. But if they live a long life, even past 6-8 months, at some point in a while, they're going to contract cryptosporidium. And if they keep it in remission, though, it's not really going to be really detrimental to their health, but it is to some of them. And then some of these ones that live really old, they're able to live to an older age. If a predator doesn't take them out, more than likely they'll succumb to cryptosporidium because if their body starts getting weaker and everything, and they get stressed, or because from say old age, if they're not able to catch as much prey, they could break out with it, and that's not a fun way to die. So it's kind of hard for me to believe that a healthy, clean, cryptos-free leopard gecko in captivity that's being well taken care of isn't happy because it's living in a paper towel tube instead of underneath a rock. Yeah,
I bet any one of those wild ones would trade places with any of yours in any minute.
Right, yeah. You're either going to get eaten by a predator, or you might succumb to cryptosporidium, or you might have to live in an enclosure that's more synthetic in appearance. Even they're not concerned about the aesthetics, though. You have a paper towel tube to hang out in. They actually love paper towel tubes, and they're I get a lot of them for free, and they're being recycled. I even put one in coco coir once, and they'd lay their eggs in the tube. It was like really cool. They'd go down to the tube and lay the eggs and back it up with coco coir.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy. All right, well, Jeff, we've been on here for 3 hours and 33 minutes.
Very long time.
Yes, very, and it was every bit of it was awesome, and I really appreciate it. So I'm going to close it here. And is there anything you want to say to everybody, and let them know anything you've got coming up or anything you want to tell them?
Oh, no, not really. If you want to check out my Instagram, you can see, just put in JMG Reptile. I'm sure it'll pop up. And, just be happy, nice to people that are in the same hobby as you, and try to just spread awareness and positivity.
All right. As I close it out, hang back. I want to talk to you for a second, but real quick, I just want to thank everybody who gets on and watches this. Make sure you pay attention to U.S. Art and help when there's problems. Help everybody who asks you a question. Don't just blow them off. You never know that person's problem or issue, and you could be a big help to them. And please subscribe and watch more of the content we put out. I'm in love with doing this, and I'm going to keep doing this, and I need people to watch. So a big thank you to Jeff for doing this. He didn't have to, but he did, and I'm very appreciative. So until the next time, I'm Trey from Palmetto State Geckos. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and on YouTube and TikTok. So thank y'all.